Marvin Gaye grew up singing in church, but he also grew up in chaos. His father was strict, abusive, and nothing Marvin ever did felt like it was good enough. But music was his escape. By the time he made it to Motown, Marvin was hungry. He started out just as a drummer, but it didn't take long before people realized his voice was really special. It was smooth, it was emotional, and it was real. Before long, he had hits like How Sweet It Is and Ain't That Peculiar. But Marvin wanted more than just the love songs that Motown was accustomed to. When he started singing with Tammy Terrell, something really began to click. Their chemistry was undeniable. People thought that they were in love for real. Then out of nowhere, tragedy struck. In 1967, Tammy collapsed on stage in Marvin's arms, a brain tumor that took her life just a few years later, and Marvin never really got over it. That pain, along with the state of the world at that time, had pushed him into making What's Going On in 1971. And that album really changed everything. Marvin poured out his soul about war, poverty, and injustice, and the people heard him. They felt him. They identified with his message. For a while, it looked like Marvin had it all. The fame, the respect, the hit records. But underneath all of that success, he was still fighting his own demons. And those demons were about to get louder. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Kanoah Speaks. We diving into the archives to bring you the moments from history that shaped the R&B and soul genres. Let's set the scene. After What's Going On, Marvin was untouchable. He had the respect, he had the power, and everybody wanted to work with him. But that success came with more pressure. And with more pressure comes more problems. Marvin's personal life was very messy. He had a complicated marriage with Anna Gordy, Berry Gordy's sister, and that relationship was filled with drama from start to finish. He wanted out, and when it finally fell apart, he put all that pain into his music. And that's how we got Hear My Dear in 1978, an album that was basically Marvin airing out every detail of their divorce. It was personal, it was raw, and almost too raw for some people to even handle. But in the middle of all that chaos, Marvin met somebody new, Janice Hunter. She was younger, beautiful, and for Marvin, she was a spark. Their relationship had its ups and downs, of course, but it gave Marvin something he hadn't had in a very long time. It gave him a sense of love and family. But still, Marvin couldn't escape himself. The drugs and the paranoia and his own insecurities were just eating away at him. The same man who could stand on a stage and make thousands of people feel joy was fighting battles behind closed doors. By the late 1970s, Marvin was beginning to slip. Yeah, he still had hits like Got to Give It Up, but while disco was taking over and new stars were rising, Marvin was struggling to keep his grip on the spotlight. And that's when another name came into the scene. Enter Teddy Pendergrass. Teddy was smooth, confident, and powerful. Reporters even called him the next Marvin Gaye, and it drove Marvin crazy. Imagine being the man who set the standard only to watch the world say someone else is ready to take your crown. And Marvin couldn't stand it. And that's when things get even messier, because Teddy wasn't just another singer. He showed interest in Janice, Marvin's wife. In her memoir, Janice described how bold Teddy was. He had asked her out, complimented her, and wasn't afraid of Marvin the way other men were. And that confidence really impressed Janice. One night while Janice and Teddy were out together, Teddy leaned in and said, "I just couldn't get you off my mind." It was flirty, it was bold, and Teddy spotted something that froze the moment. He saw Marvin's car drive by the restaurant. Not once, not twice, but a bunch of times. Marvin was following them, and Teddy told her, "I'm not afraid of Marvin. As long as you're comfortable with me, I'm comfortable with you." But Janice admitted deep down she was torn. Part of her was thrilled that someone else saw her value and gave her the attention and respect that Marvin wasn't giving. But another part of her was scared. Scared of Marvin's obsession and scared of how far he might go. When Marvin finally parked his car right in front of the restaurant, Janice couldn't take it anymore. She asked Teddy if they could just leave, and he agreed without hesitation. He drove her home, treated her mom with kindness, gave her a goodnight kiss, and that was it. No drama, no pressure, just respect. For Janice, it was a reminder there were men out there who saw her differently than Marvin did. And honestly, this whole moment just kind of shows that it shows how human Marvin really was. You know, behind the success, behind the hits, he was a human. On one hand, you can't deny his genius, right? Like, he gave the world timeless music, but that genius was tangled up by jealousy, insecurity, and control issues. Like a lot of us are. You know, I'm not perfect, y'all not perfect. Nobody is, right? But reading Janice's account of the events that happened, Teddy came across as the complete opposite of what Marvin was at that time. Confident, respectful, and unbothered by the shadow that Marvin had casted over Janice. And that contrast says a lot. Marvin had the talent, the legend status, but he couldn't always handle his personal relationships with that same grace. To me, and you know, it kind of hurts to say because I grew up looking up to people like Marvin. To me, it feels like Marvin was so used to being idolized by the world that he didn't know how to handle someone close to him choosing their own independence. Watching Janice go out with Teddy probably hit his ego harder than anything, like it probably would hit most of us. But instead of letting her breathe, he tried to control the situation, literally circling the restaurant like a warning. It's sad because It shows that Marvin's biggest battle wasn't with Teddy at all, or even with Janice. It was with himself. And after the drama with Teddy, Marvin's marriage to Janice kept getting shakier. They had love, of course, they had 2 kids together, but Marvin's demons were never really that far away. The drugs, the paranoia, the mood swings, it was a storm that never really had the chance to settle down. By the early 80s, Marvin's career had hit rock bottom. He was battling the IRS, drowning in debt, and at one point he had even moved to Europe just to escape his problems. From the outside looking in, it looks like the same man who gave the world ground-shaking hits like What's Going On was now completely lost in his own world. But Marvin wasn't finished just yet. In 1982, he made a comeback with Midnight Love. And from that album came Sexual Healing. That song put him back on top. It was a smash. It won him 2 Grammys and gave Marvin the recognition that he had been chasing for years. For a moment, it seemed like he was back on track. Still though, the problems didn't go away. His relationship with Janice couldn't survive the chaos, and they had divorced in 1981, and it was finalized in 1982. But even after all that, Marvin kept struggling with the same demons, the ones that no award or no hit record could cure. So Marvin's story at this point really shows how success and struggle can exist at the same time. On one side, he proved that he could rise again when everybody counted him out. And, Sexual Healing was proof that his gift never really left him. But personally, he couldn't keep things together. That shows me that talent and fame can't fix the deeper issues that a person can carry. Marvin had the world's applause, right? But inside, he was still battling himself. By the mid-1980s, Marvin Gaye was living in Los Angeles with his parents. And on the surface, things looked like they were getting better. Sexual Healing had revived his career. He was back in the spotlight, and fans were reminded why he was called the Prince of Motown. But behind closed doors, his drug use was heavy, his moods were unstable, and the tension inside his parents' household was building day by day. Marvin and his father had clashed his whole entire life, and now back under the same roof, those arguments grew more explosive. On April 1st, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, it all came to a tragic end. After a heated fight, Marvin's father shot him twice, killing him instantly. The news shocked the world. Fans couldn't believe that the voice behind What's Going On, Let's Get It On, and Sexual Healing was gone. Just like that, one of the greatest voices in music history was silenced. Marvin's death was the end of a legend. It was a reminder of how deep personal struggles can run, and even for someone who seemed larger than life. What hits me most about Marvin's story is how much beauty and pain had lived inside the same person. He gave us music that will last forever, but his personal battles with his father, with drugs, with himself, it all followed him to the very end. He was pronounced dead at 1:01 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on April 1st, 1984. Following the incident, Marvin Gaye Sr. was charged with voluntary manslaughter and received a 6-year suspended sentence along with 5 years probation. After his death, Marvin Gaye's body was cremated at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills, and his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean. To me, Marvin's life is proof that talent can take you to the top, but it doesn't necessarily erase the wounds that you carry, and it doesn't keep you at the top. His story is heartbreaking, but it's also human. And maybe that's why his music feels so real, because it came from somebody who was fighting, somebody who was searching, and someone who was hurting, just like the rest of us. Cheers.